So overall, I think Last Epoch is a really solid game, and it's set to poise itself as potentially one of the top ARPGs coming. It's only in beta right now, but it is very solid. The latest update has made drastic improvements. Well, let's get more into the details here. The core gameplay loop, I think, is satisfying. It pulls you in to make you want to grind more, getting incremental upgrades on your character. And I think it was quite enjoyable. The game is pretty simple, but it still has depth, so this might act as like a mid-ground if you don't want something as complex as PoE. Something that requires you to like have a wiki open at all times, and you have to constantly be learning. It's not really the case with this game. It's pretty straightforward. You can make most things work, I feel like, not even following a guide. So if you like to figure things out yourself without having to have like a PhD in build making, this game's a good opportunity for you to have a kind of medium difficulty / complexity. Yeah, it still has depth, so I'd say that's good. Next pro, the gear. There's some interesting uniques. They're definitely not bad. I wouldn't say they're super exciting, but it's a good baseline. I mean, I'm sure making uniques has not been their focus while it's still in beta, so I mean, that'll only get better as time goes on. A system I do really like with uniques is it's called Legendary Potential System. Essentially what it lets you do is it lets you fuse a rare item within a unique item, and it will give one of the rare modifiers from the rare item and put it on the unique at a like random chance. So you'd try and get like a good rare item with 4 good mods, then you'd fuse it with the unique, and it's another layer of min-maxing your character. I think it's a cool system, and I think you can roll 1 to 3 legendary potentials, so you can get up to 3 different rare mods on your unique item, essentially allowing you to get a really powerful unique item with all the unique effects, but it essentially gets rare modifiers too, so I think it's a cool system. Idols are like the D2 charms of this game, essentially, except they're way cooler, and they even enable builds. Like, for example, the build on screen right now is the one I've been playing. It's Smite Hammerden, and you essentially you hit a bunch of things with your hammer throw, but I have allied idols that proc smite on hit, so I got a bunch of those, and I got it up to like 35% or something, so it's essentially a different build than normal hammer throw. Hammer throw is just the vector in which I'm using to proc the smite. So another part of gear that I think is really good is the Exalted Mods, and what this is tiers on mods rolls 1 to 5, which is craftable, and then you can roll, I think, tier 6, and I think there's a tier 7, which are called Exalted Mods, and these are drop only, so it makes rares more interesting, because you can drop like a really good rare. It's not like crafting is the end-all be-all, you start from nothing. The items on the ground actually matter, and that's pretty much where you'll start all your crafting projects. Another thing is rare mods themselves, so not like tiers of mods, but there is rarer modifiers that you can find on the ground through shards or shattering rare items. I like that. Target farmability for gear. So some uniques are able to be target farmed, like you can go to a certain monolith, which is one of the areas. There's 10 monoliths in the end game, and each one is different, like has different tile sets and stuff, and different bosses, and different uniques will be target farmable in certain ones. So the crafting system is pretty much 100% deterministic, and I think it works really well in this game. As I said, you can like gradually upgrade your items. It allows you to have a lot of agency over your gear, even though you can't pick up like a white item and then just craft it to GG using just like RNG over and over and over again. It's not like PoE. You actually will have to find the good rare on the ground and then craft it from that state, which I think is interesting. Like I said with the Exalted mods earlier, typically what you do is you try and look for a good Exalted mod, and then it can also roll more than one Exalted mod too, so you can have like 2, for example, and then you'd try and craft it from that point. So I think it's a really good system. I think they really nailed the crafting system. It seems like it would take a decent amount of time to get like really, really high tier gear, like basically perfect gear. Seems like it would be really, really hard to get. But getting really, really high tier gear that's maybe within like 10% of that perfect gear, it's pretty achievable, I think, for most people. I mean, I only have a couple days of playtime on my character, and some of my pieces were gear. We're pretty much getting there. But for the average player, which doesn't have as much time to play as a streamer, I think it'd be a healthy balance where you get gear that works and is good for a while, and then you slowly get up to almost perfect gear, but not quite. And you can feel good about crafting that. Next is the QL in this game is quite good. They have a lot of different QL that other ARPGs might not have, namely like PoE. They're much better on QL than PoE is. So their in-game filter, yes, I said in-game. The filter is editable from in-game, so you can open it up and edit it, and you can edit it on the go and switch it for whatever you need to do. It's really easy to work with. Like, anybody can really figure it out. And then you can also like download a base filter from somebody who made it, then edit it to be your own needs. That's what I did. But it is way easier than PoE's filter system. So another thing that a lot of people I think will like is loot vacuum for certain items. I mean, it's basically only crafting items. You click it and then it'll pick up every other one in the area. You don't have to individually click them. It has a bit of an extended pickup range. It's not really huge, but it's nice. Where you pick an item, you don't have to be directly on top of it. Respeccing in the game is quite easy, though I'm not really a fan of how you respec your individual skills. Like, for example, the hammer throw, if I wanted to respec it, the way it works is you respec the point, and then you have to, essentially it loses a level, so you have to re-level it up. So the way you respec is by taking levels out, and you have to re-level it up. At the end game, this isn't really much of an issue, because it'll level up insanely quickly. So you're like maybe, I don't know, level 70, you're going to respec a few points, you're still in early monoliths, you're not in empowered ones yet, so you're not really getting a ton of XP. It can be kind of annoying to have to respec those if you need to. In terms of your passive skills, those are really, really good to respec. It just costs a little bit of gold, and it's not a hassle at all. Autosort buttons, you can auto-sort pretty much anything in the game. Your stash, your inventory. There's a button to send your crafting items to a specific crafting area that is infinite. It's infinite as far as I know. It'll hold all your crafting stuff, which is really nice. There is a map menu. Like if you open the map with all the waypoints on it, it shows you if you picked up all the passive points / required quests for leveling, which is good QL. And you can just see if you missed anything, and then you can go back and do it. There's no ID or portal scrolls in this game, so everything drops identified, which is a pretty big game decision actually. I wasn't really sure where to put this, but I'll put it under the QL category. So there's no ID scrolls, everything drops ID'd. So this allows you to filter the items you want by mod. So if an item with the mods you want drops, you can pick it up. There's an in-game guide that covers a lot of concepts. It's not like overbearing or anything, but it has enough info that is good for new players, and it's a lot more helpful than the PoE one, I think. I referred to it a few times, but I think the game's straightforward enough that you don't really need it. There's an offline mode, so you do not need to be offline to play the game, which is good. Especially with this multiplayer launch, which is not the smoothest, so if you want to play, you can just use the offline mode and have no issues. The stash in this game, it does not get cluttered with a bunch of random junk / currency types all over the place. It's basically just the gear you are saving for future builds or whatever. The character classes in this game, it seems like there's a pretty good build diversity. I've heard a lot of different builds going around that people are playing, seen a lot of different people playing builds like on streams. There's also pretty interesting builds available. There's Auto Bomber build, there's a Bow Mage build, there's Smite on Hit, the one I'm playing, etc. So they're pretty interesting. Every class and archetype has at least a few good builds as far as I've seen. Nothing is unviable, really. I mean, maybe there's a few skills that are especially bad. I don't really know what they are, but every game has something like that. But it seems like it's a good balance in this game. The design of the game, I think, is pretty good. The visuals are pretty good now. The latest patch, I think, helped a lot with that. My big gripe with the game in history in the last 2 years has been that it looks not good, doesn't sound good. But I think that's pretty much fixed now. Especially, I think there's like lighting changes. I think it's in an acceptable state now that I can enjoy it. Updates so far have been good. Performance is way better. Kind of just touched on that a little bit, but yeah, the game is in a much better spot than it used to be. So I'd recommend giving it a try if you own it and haven't played it for a while. You might be surprised with how much better it is. Like I really can't touch on it enough on how much that the performance got better. It's kind of crazy. It kind of went from the last time I played, some areas were nearly unplayable to now I never really drop below 120 FPS, and that's while I'm streaming as well. So if I wasn't streaming, I'd have even way better performance. The last little miscellaneous thing, I guess, is that there's a good amount of map tile sets, so that doesn't really get repetitive. Now, going into the cons. This may sound like I'm kind of ripping the game up here, but to be honest, I think at least this first one could pretty easily be fixed. I mean, quote unquote easily. Nothing's really super easy within this kind of space. But just want to be clear that I think the game is good in its current state. But the next few things I'm going to talk about do sound pretty bad. So the end game, the maps feel pretty terrible, which is it's a pretty big thing if the end game overall doesn't feel very good to me. Now, let me put it this way. The endgame loop, I do like it, but the maps themselves are they're just really bad, to be completely honest. But I still want to log in at the end of the day and keep grinding another piece of gear. So it's like the mechanics that are in place carry the game really hard. To the point where I still want to play. But anyways, let me get into this. The maps themselves are usually huge. Now this might not actually be a bad thing if there wasn't a few other things that detract from it, like for example, they often have awful layouts and it turns into a walking simulator. I mean, you can kind of see this on the screen right now. I just kind of put gameplay footage on, like I didn't cherry pick these scenes or whatever. This is just kind of, I just clicked a random point in my VOD that I was playing. You can kind of see it's a walking simulator. And if you can get bad objectives, which I guess luckily, well, it's not that uncommon, but like I said, I didn't choose this footage, I just clicked a random point. You can get bad objectives where you have to go to like 3 different points on the huge map, kill 3 different things. Like right now I have to slay all 3 patrolling void horrors, and they're in 3 different areas of the map, and there's a bunch of dead ends, and it just does not feel good. Yeah, and you run to different sides of the map to kill a single mob, and it's not good. It would be better if they just put in like the Diablo 3 rifting system. Honestly, just make it so you kill enough monsters, fill up the bar, spawn the guardian. That would be way better than this current system. It really feels bad. And this map, if you've been watching the gameplay at all, this map is not even the worst offender of a bad layout. There's somehow maps that are like maybe even 5 times worse as this one. So overall, like, maps have way too high of a variance between each other. Need a normalization process of some sort. Like, here's another thing that makes the maps bad. About them being big. Some maps have like no mobs. Some maps have no rare mobs. Some maps have like 90% rare mobs. Some maps are way too short. Like you'll just run like 3 feet and there's the objective. That is pretty rare. Most maps are just way too long and huge. So the thing about mobs, the trash mobs in this game, aka like these white mobs on the screen, or even the blue mobs, they give like no XP and no loot. Only the rare mobs are worth killing. So that's kind of an issue, because it kind of turns in you just run till you see a rare mob, you kill it, and then you keep going. Or sometimes there's like there's no rare mobs, so it just turns into completely running. And even when there is rare mobs, I'm not even sure they're worth killing. It seems like the meta is largely just running to the end of the map, doing the objective, and then clicking the loot box and loading up the next map. Which is a problem, because that's not very fun. You're just running to the end and clicking the box, loading up the next map, clicking the box, loading up the next map. Yeah, I mean, not great. I feel like the game would benefit largely if it just stuck in a Band-Aid Diablo 3 rift system, which is not really good, but it would be better than what's in right now. The dungeons and / the arena in this game are pretty lackluster, to be honest. The dungeons, I think, are pretty cool, actually, but in execution, I don't know, they don't feel very good. They're not very, but I don't know. I can see where the engagement in them is supposed to come from. Like, they give you a little special mechanic that does extra things. Like, in one of them, you swap from light. Oh god. So, why Phlegm? Okay, so you swap from like light mode to a dark mode, or maybe like void versus unvoid. Anyways, doesn't matter. There's 2 modes, and it like swaps your reality essentially. And in one, it's like 2 different maps stacked on top of each other, and you swap between them, kind of. So you have to like swap, and there'll be different mobs in one dimension than the other. And then you have to like run through gates. The gates might be there in one dimension, not in the other. So you can swap to get to the place you need to go. And then the boss will have like big channeling one-shots, and you have to swap dimensions to not get hit by it. It'll like follow you. It's kind of like a cat and mouse game, and you like fight it. It was really hard to do with the multiplayer performance, but I could see that dungeon being pretty cool, but I don't know. Overall, the dungeons, there's a good concept there, but it needs a little bit of work. The arena itself seemed incredibly bad, but maybe you just like have to do the endless arena over and over again until you get to a really high wave, and then it's worth doing, but that could take a really long time, and yeah, it just wasn't great. So that's about it on the endgame system. It needs a lot of work. The difficulty and balance in this game, I feel like it relies too much on infinite scaling mechanics to make it difficult. If you're not ultimately ultra scaling your maps in the empowered monoliths and stacking a ton of corruption, which is essentially just giving it flat more % damage and HP, you'll basically never die if you're playing an even halfway well-rounded build the difficulty is way too easy. That being said, there's a few mob types. This is another thing. I poked about it a little bit with maps. It needs some normalization. It's the same thing with mob types. Most, I'd say probably like 90% of mobs / bosses will do basically no damage to you. And then there's some other ones, notably they're like, I think they're called osprix. They're like birds that have fireballs. They do way more damage than anything else in the game. It's the only thing I really died to on this character, like unintentionally. Like I did a little bit of limit testing dying. It was originally a hardcore character, but it died to a DC, so then I just started blasting the endgame as hard as I could and did some limit testing. Basically the only thing I ever died to without almost intentionally doing it was from these birds. They do way more damage than anything else in the game. It's the same thing with the bosses. Most of the end game, like quest echo bosses that you fight in the monoliths, most of them you can just tank and just do nothing. Then there's like 2 that do way more damage than anything else for some reason. One is Lagon, the big crab guy. His beam, let me give you an example here. The first time I did him at about 1500 HP, and I was way less tanky than my character was. That it was towards the end of my experience. So I stepped into his lightning beam. It did almost all my HP. Now I got my character pretty much twice as tanky, twice the HP, and I stepped into it again to test it, and it did almost all my HP. I'm not sure if it's supposed to just be a flat percent amount or something, but it didn't seem that getting any tankier actually made it more easy to tank. Now that could be intentional, but the way this is in the game is it pretty much always kills you, while none of the other bosses really do. Now there's another thing, the Reign of Dragons, I think, monolith. It's like an undead dragon thing. He has these blood pools, which now I'm pretty sure these are percentage HP, and they just nearly delete you instantly if you stand in them, while no other boss has anything like this. So it's these 2 bosses are just way harder than the other ones, and it's kind of jarring when you get in there because you're used to these kind of easy bosses, and then these 2 with seemingly no... Oh, you can see the birds on screen right now. You see those like fireballs? Those are birds. They do way more damage than anything else in the game. Anyway, so these 2 bosses, like, just seemingly for no reason, do way more damage. Like, they're not even the final bosses or anything, and it doesn't seem like there'd be any reason for this. So again, another variance thing. Mobs in the game have monsters have way different health pools for some reason. So for example, there's like 2 or 3 mobs, which I'm pretty sure they even only spawn as white mobs, but they're like 10 times tankier than anything else in the game, even tankier than like the bosses. There's like this one guy spins a stone around. He has so much HP that it's like it's never worth killing white mobs in general, but these ones in particular, it's especially worth just ignoring because they're so much tankier and they don't even give you anything extra. And it's kind of weird to me how things like that exist. So final point, I guess, mostly just nitpicking. And it's fine because it's still in beta, but there's occasional jankiness. Like there's bugs still. Overall, it's really not, like, it doesn't really impact much stuff, but it's occasionally there, and it's a beta, so it'll be there. I don't really want to mention this, but at multiplayer start, which is when I played, even towards as the player base kind of tapered off and it wasn't at launch and all the major issues were fixed, it was still kind of rubber bandy. It was definitely playable towards the end, and like towards the middle of the week / the end of the weekend. Definitely playable. Experiences bug, which is probably gone now, but the more players you had in the map, It seemed like a chance your instance would just completely freeze. At 2 players, it didn't really happen, but once you hit 3 and 4, it was increasingly common. I imagine that's probably fixed now. The other thing is they don't let you choose your server, and I think my account got stuck in like the wrong server somehow. It kept putting me in like a server that is not the closest one to me, and it also doesn't let you choose your server, so that's kind of weird. But that's about it for my review here. Overall, I think it is a very solid game. I think if they fixed the endgame mapping system, I think it'd be really good. Probably a solid number 2 right behind PoE. I mean, I think right now it's my number 3 behind Torchlight Infinite and then PoE. If they fix the endgame system, I think it would easily be number 2. But for now, that's it.